mic's on.
Okay. Are we ready to go?
No.
Ready?
I'm ready.
I think we're good.
All right. It's called to order. The Planning Commission meeting, December 7th. Let's see. Vice Chair Joe Padilla is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so roll call.
Commissioner Hamel? Here. Commissioner Heedy?
Here.
Commissioner Sarkia?
Here.
Vice Chair Padilla?
Here.
Chair Dunstan?
Here. Okay, reordering of agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to reorder the meeting, bring forward the discussion of possible use of city-owned property at 480 Central Avenue before the public hearings. And then I need to recuse myself at the time of the public hearings.
Okay, no problem. Is any, no,
No, just as long as there's commission consensus.
consensus? Fine, we're good to go? All right, perfect. So we'll go ahead and, well, I'll go through real quick. Do we have any presentations?
No, sir.
No. Okay, let's do the approval of minutes from the regular Planning Commission meeting, November 16th, 2017. Does anybody...
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I was absent, so. Okay, public comments. No public comments. Any consent calendar? None. Continued public hearings? None. So we'll move to item number 3, other business. Discussion and possible uses for the city-owned property at 480 Central Avenue.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, members of the Commission. The city recently purchased the property located at 480 Central Avenue. It's zoned RM16, which is multifamily, 16 units per acre, and is 0.26 acres in size. The residential uses are located to the west, north, and south of the property, and to the east are a public alley and a commercially zoned lot fronting the Avenue of Flags. The Council has directed staff to research the planning aspects and economic impacts of the following uses of the property: a community garden, a mixed-use project of multifamily residential and office/retail, multifamily residential, which would be about 4 units maximum, a civic community center, and a public parking lot. One of the reasons residential was looked at from a couple of the council members' perspectives is the properties on the avenue. We did a survey last year with people helping people, and we need to find places for some of those residents to be relocated to. And they thought that maybe a mixed-use project or an apartment complex that the city owned and ran or had somebody run would be a perfect place to relocate some of those people. So that's why that is in the particular mix. The council wanted input from the Planning Commission on the appropriate land uses and what they would like to see. And Cosmont Companies, our economic consultant, prepared a cost-benefit analysis of the various uses, which is included as your attachment number 3. So they did look at the various development scenarios, and as far as just a strictly cost perspective, a public parking lot through a parking district would gain more revenue for the city. But if you want to look at attracting businesses or maybe relocating residents, then maybe that's not the most advantageous use of the property. Maybe it's a mixed-use project or a residential project. So again, the City Council wants to hear from the Planning Commission. We did notice all the property owners surrounding this for tonight's meeting, because we did have one come to the City Council meeting at public comment and wanted to be involved. But I do not see them in the audience tonight, which we will still continue to keep them in the process, and we will send your recommendations up to the Planning Commission or to the City Council once you give us input on what your take is on this particular property. It is not within the Avenue of Flags specific plan, but it is adjoining it, so it still could be a parking lot that could support a project on the avenue through the Development Opportunity Reserve. So it doesn't, parking lots don't have to be within the specific plan area. They could be on this particular property. And if we did do a parking lot, we would have to make sure we had adequate buffer and screening from the residential uses that are to the south of this, right along the property line. So I will open up to the commission to see what they think about this particular property.
Mr. Chairman? I'd like to propose one other item we could look at, selling it. Okay. If you want me to, I'll explain why.
I will just let you know that that wasn't one of the options of the council because they consciously, but not on a unanimous vote, chose to purchase the property.
Okay. I can explain my reasoning.
Let's hear it.
You know, they're recommending, okay, so we spent about $375,000 on purchasing it. If we develop it into a parking lot, if we do it, we're probably spending about $410,000, $450,000. If you have a parking lot and you're going to meter it, you have to have somebody to go look at it. I don't know if we have a parking meter person. He's spending half their time doing it.
We're not looking at parking meters. It would be a public lot that we wouldn't charge for, but a parking district is businesses participate for the various public parking lots.
And I'll tell you, that'll just be all the neighbors parking their extra vehicle in that public lot. I think that you're going to be spending $13,000 to $14,000 a space. To me, that seems pretty outrageous for gaining 30 parking spaces. So I would be in favor of selling it. And I know that's not the city council's wish, but that's where my money is lying right now. So,
and that's fine. That's what we're looking for to bring back up to that.
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
When did the city buy it?
last earlier this year.
And the reason being?
They wanted to provide property to be partner on development of the avenue, to have some skin in the game.
So on the parking, would it be monitored in any way, or?
My initial thoughts, there will be, at night, there would be no restriction. So if people wanted to park there, but during the day there probably would be a parking restriction like we have in front of Ellen's and in front of the UPS store. That would be my guess of how to make sure people are not doing long-term parking there. But at night, when there's nothing going on, I don't see there's any issue with that.
I guess what I'm not quite getting or understanding is why that property would have been purchased to be part of the Avenue of the Flags, to participate in it, if it's not in the specific plan zone of the Avenue of the Flags.
What I said, to support the specific plan in the downtown. So if it's made into a parking lot, that can support the downtown area. But even if you do a mixed-use project, you still have retail or office or something next to the downtown area. So I mean, it's just an alleyway away from the boundary of the specific plan. So it can still be part of the downtown plan, even though it's not part of the specific plan area. And we did look at buying the other vacant lot next to Houston's, which is immediately to the east of this, but couldn't come to a negotiation price with the owner. So some council members were interested in actually both of those properties.
I know they want to have a stake in the game for the Avenue Flags plan, but they've got to have some idea of what they're. Why would they want to buy both those properties? What's kind of the concept that's going on, floating around in their minds?
The only concept I can give you is to be part of the avenue, to show the city's commitment to the avenue and development, and the city now has a stake in the game because they have properties they can help purchase. They can purchase and then help develop. That's basically the rationale.
Okay.
Well, for now, since there's no particular plan for it, just put that galvanized granite or decomposed granite on there and keep it clean for now until something in the future.
Well, what the council wants is to do something soon, so that's why they're looking for the commissioner's ideas. Well, they actually want to build something, not just leave it as a vacant property. So they want the commission's input on land uses or what they want. So Commissioner Heedy thinks we should divest ourselves of this and let the private market take care of it, which was the feeling of a couple council members. Like I said, the purchase was not a unanimous decision on the council's part.
Has there been any thought about putting a city building or some kind of...
The Civic is one of the options that we provided. So the options that the council wants to really look at is mixed use, multifamily, a civic community center, or a parking lot. So again, with a civic community center, you could have apartments above it as well. So there's a variety of things you can do there. I don't think it would lend itself to a city hall type of facility. Maybe a meeting community center, a visitor center, or something like that, but not a city government facility. There's not enough parking and not enough space to accommodate the needs that we have.
It seems to me that not being on the Avenue of the Flags, having a mixed use with a retail below and residential above, doesn't seem to me that it would be consistent with the plan, or at least would work. For me as a business person, being a block away from the main thoroughfare where all the action's happening. So if I had to pick one to do, I think just the multifamily residential would be the project that I would support.
What would you consider mixed use with office as opposed to retail? With apartments above, and that the 4 apartments may not maximize the income back to the city, whereas a mixed-use project with something below and apartments above could maximize the.
With an office, it'd probably be more practical than any sort of retail would be. Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of fall in the same boat as you, Joe, in regards to it's just kind of an odd location. I mean, I get that it's on 2nd, so that's kind of the main hub, at 2nd and the Avenue, but it is about a block away. I'm struggling in my mind to really visualize something that's going to be Avenue-esque, if you will, based on what we've talked about. So I guess of the options, I think I'd probably go in similar direction that Joe is. I hear what Dan's saying, though. From a parking lot perspective, I don't think that'll be effective, but other ways, other things we could potentially do. I don't know, Patty or Marcelo.
On the multifamily or the mixed-use residential office, is that going to be considered as low-income or affordable?
That would be up to the Planning Commission and City Council to decide, but I think what they were looking at is a affordable complex so we could get some of those residents in there. And if the city managed it through the Housing Authority or some other group like that, then it would be properly maintained like Vintage Walk and Valley Station is. But that's the intent, at least from the council members, for the type of apartments.
And the idea is to potentially help with moving some of the tenants that are on the avenue today.
Pardon? What?
Was some of the idea about that moving, if you had to relocate
yes,
tenants that are on the avenue?
I'll give them offers for those people to move to the new facility. Yes.
And with a mixed use, Mark, it's 4 units. Is what we're talking about?
Yeah, it's basically 4 units based on the size of the property. Mm-hmm. We might, through density bonus or something like that, get 5, but for just analysis purposes right now, it's about 4. But I don't think you get more than 5.
Mm-hmm. And from an office space, how many office spaces are we talking about there? And is that another 4 or 5 probably below them?
Not even that. Probably 1 or 2. 1 or 2. Two office spaces down there.
Well, I think I would lean more towards multifamily residential, because on number 2, the mixed-use residential / office, if that's, office would be better than retail, but what office tenant are you going to get in there? That's not really a office space. I mean, neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So
that's a good point too.
Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to visualize what's
who's going to go in there? So maybe you do it all multifamily.
And for the 3 of you with multifamily, you really aren't seeing parking lot as a viable, good land use for that particular property.
Not at all.
I don't think so.
Okay, well that's good. That's what I want to.
I mean, maybe in the future, once the avenue's established and parking becomes more of a thing, then I can see that being an opportunity, and maybe we can put some restrictions around it. Maybe some of the tenants on the avenue can, like you said, that can be, kind of an investment for them, and we can give them, some of the considerations that were part of the avenue opportunity. So But now it's so early in the game. I mean, what it's going to be a year or two from now, it's hard to envision based on where we are today. So, and do you want to just sit on it? It sounds like the council wants to move.
Well, basically
I still think they should just put galvanized granite on there
and hold it.
yeah,
And wait.
I
Okay.
don't see spending. I don't like spending any money on it at this point.
How about like a garden in that case? Like a simple
We have that community
simple
garden.
community garden.
I wouldn't even do that. I would just put that condensed granite on there, and if you want to use it for parking during events or something, it's ready. But I don't like spending any more money on it than we already have. Until something comes along later that, oh yeah, you know, we've got the property, we can do something with it now.
Yeah.
With the help of outside investment. But I don't like to
Well,
see
definitely.
putting more money out than it needs to.
It definitely, if it was developed, we'd be working with a partner on it. Wouldn't be the city doing it. So let me summarize. I don't think anybody thinks a public parking lot is a good land use for that property. I think Commissioner Heedy thinks city shouldn't be involved in developing it at all. We should put it back on the market. Commissioner Sarkia thinks we should just hold on to it. Make sure there's no weeds, no dust, so there's no impacts to the residents. And the remaining three think maybe a multi-family project is probably the best land use for it. And again, I think from all of your perspective is it needs to be some partnership that we move forward. The city's just not going to build it. But from a land use perspective, multi-family you think makes the most sense on that property. Which I don't disagree with. I think that's probably one of the, with the other residential there, I think it would be less impactful to them if it was multifamily. So
It's really hard to make, you know, without more information about what the future looks like. It's hard to even really make any kind of educated decision at this point.
they're just looking at it, and then if they decide they want to go multifamily, then we look at it for a partner to come in and go from there. But this is that very valuable input from the commission, and that's what they're looking for. And I'll package it up next year and bring it back to council with the economic analysis that we did from Cosmont, and go from there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we will move on to agenda item number 2, new public hearings for resolution number 1714, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Buellton, California, approving the mitigating negative declaration 17MND01 and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the network project BUE 5, located at the southern terminus of Industrial Way, assessors parcels numbers 099-690-045, 099-690-046, and 099-690-001, and making findings in support. And resolution number 17-15, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Buellton, California, approving a final development plan 16 FDP 07 and lot line adjustment 17 LLA 03 for the network BUE 5 project located at the southern terminus of Industrial Way. Assessors parcel numbers 099-690-045, 099-690-046, and 099-690-001, and making findings in support thereof.
Very good. Wow. Mr. Chairman, at this time I need to recuse myself as my employment is within a couple of feet proximity. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy your studying.
Enjoy your study.
All right. Good evening, Chair Dunstan, Commissioners. This is the Planning Commission public hearing for the network project, or otherwise known as BUE 5. And just right off the bat, I did want to mention that tonight's Planning Commission public hearing will be continued to the December 21st. This is as a result of the the requirement for the 30-day environmental review period to commence, which will end on the 21st of December. So, and also, the project applicant will not, the reason that we had this hearing, part of the reason that we had this hearing in advance is because the project applicant will actually be absent on the 21st, so we wanted to give him an opportunity to answer any questions that you guys might have. But ultimately, the vote on the project will occur on the 21st, and we will continue it tonight. So I did want to go through, the elements of the project and our interpretation of that and how it meets our code with the applicant present and do that portion of it tonight, just so that if the commission has any questions for either staff or the applicant, they can do so tonight. Okay, so the project applicant is Gavin Moores with Moho Development V LLC, and the application is for a final development plan and a lot line adjustment. As part of the final development plan, a height limit modification is required, and I will go into more detail about what that entails later on in the presentation. So this is a vicinity map. The project is actually located on 3 parcels. However, the majority of the development and the building is located on 2 parcels. So here's Industrial Way, and it's just located at the very southern and southwestern end of the Industrial Way. And the larger parcel here to the west is actually the location of the off-site retention basin that will serve the project. And I will go into further detail about that later on in the presentation as well. So land use and zoning. The zoning for the property is industrial and open space. However, the building itself will be located fully within the M zone, industrial zone. Parking, the retention basin, and other landscaping elements of the project will partially be located in the open space area, but the building will be completely within the M zoning district. The general plan designation is industrial and manufacturing and open space and parks and recreation. I did want to include this map here showing that the project site is located within the 100-year flood boundary, and so the entire building will have to be built 2 feet above base flood elevation as a result. So the project size, so the 2 parcels where the majority of the development will be occurring on is 2 parcels, 5.08 acres, and that's on APN 099690045 and 046. And the building proposed for it's an 66,822 square foot industrial building that also includes outdoor patio areas. There's a larger one located to the south of the building and a smaller one located to the northwest, on the northwest corner. And then also parking and landscaping to support this use. There's, as I mentioned briefly, an off-site retention basin proposed on the adjacent to the 1 parcel, just on a portion of it, to the parcel located to the west of the project site, and that's on 099690001. And I'll go into a little bit further detail about this later on in the presentation, but the current location that the retention basin is located on will actually be changed to be located outside of the sensitive habitat that has been identified, so that will change as part of the building plans when they come in. So just a little more detail of our project description. It's for a final development plan, 16 FDP07, and lot line adjustment 17 LLA03, again for a 66,822 square foot industrial building and associated improvements. Located at the southwest terminus of Industrial Way. So this includes a single-story building, and it's 45 feet in height from finished floor elevation. However, I'll go into detail. So that, the height requirement is 45 feet in the industrial zone, but I'll go into the details about the modification later. It includes 13 tenant spaces ranging in size from about 2,000 square feet to about 20,000 square feet. There are 10 smaller suites and 3 larger size suites. The applicant has provided an estimated employee required for each type of space, and they've estimated 3 to 4 employees for the smaller units, and 10 to 12 employees would be required for the larger units. And the proposed uses at this point primarily relate to wine, beer, and spirits distribution and other light industrial uses. However, any other uses that decide to come in here would be required to meet our standards and be an allowable land use in the industrial zone. So at this point, the applicant doesn't have all of the tenants that may be located in this site, but they would be required to meet parking standards and allowable land uses for this building. Okay, so project features. There's 180 parking spaces proposed, including 6 ADA spaces. 4 bike rack areas are located in various places around the building. Outdoor patio and plaza areas. 2 loading docks, which each have space for 2 large trucks, so 4 large truck loading areas in total. There are 2 access gates into the project site proposed, both on the north and east side of the building. And also included on the inside of the building at this point is common restrooms and associated uses like a hallway and closet space and things like that. There's landscaping around the building and throughout the property, as well as a bioretention landscaping. Again, there's the off-site retention basin located to the west of the project site that is proposed. And just as a side note, the architecture, which I will go over in detail later, is considered to be contemporary ranch, which is consistent with the community design guidelines. So access to the project site, and I will have a diagram on the next slide to show you the location of these access points. But there is one primary access point that has an existing access easement, which is located on the northeast side of the property, coming off of Industrial Way. And there's a secondary access point proposed via easement between Ascendant Spirits and the Terravant building. And this access easement is primarily required because of the location of the loading dock that's located on the east side of the building, just for maneuvering purposes and getting those large trucks out of that project site. And lastly, there's one emergency access point that is proposed via access easement at the south end of the Bottlelist building at the southern end of the project site. So again, just to reiterate, here's the diagram. You can see this is to the north here, so this would be the primary existing access to the project site. Here's Ascendant Spirits in the Terravant building, and here would be the secondary access point, and you can see the loading zone there, loading area there. And lastly, the southern end of the project site, the emergency access, the proposed emergency access location. And just as a note, the project will be conditioned that the 2 access points that don't currently have easements, they would be required to obtain easements, of course, for those access points. So this is just an overview of the site plan. I'll go into more detail of the site plan with the landscape plan and one that's a little bit more zoomed in. But I did just want to point out here that you can see the existing, as the plans show, the retention basin proposed in this location this is a population of willow thickets, and so that is the reason that the applicant is going to be relocating that basin, and of course that would require to make sure that the sizing is correct, the design is correct, and etc. But at this point they will be relocating that as part of the building plans. Just to go into a little bit of detail, I'll flip to the landscape plans because that tends to show a little bit more detail. So you can see the general layout of the building. You have several smaller suites here located at on the northeastern side, as well as the southeastern side, and then you have the 3 larger suites located more toward the south side of the building. And the majority of the parking is located, as you see, to the south of the project site within the floodway, which is allowed. You can have parking in the floodway, and then just a row of parking around the building to provide additional spaces. Let's see. So this shows it a little better, shows the suites and the layout a little bit better, but you can see all the suites, the patio here to the north, the larger patio and plaza area that sort of wraps around the entire south side of the building. One thing I did want to point out is part of some of the changes that were made by the applicant since the last time that you saw the plans. They have added connectivity around the entire building. Before, there were pockets where there was no sidewalks or area for people to connect throughout the entire building. So this just creates more connectivity and more access around within and around the building. And another thing to point out is they actually have reduced the square footage of the overall square footage of the building by about 10,000 square feet, or no, 7,000 square feet. And you can see where they did that. This building used to pop out a little bit further here to the east. They've since moved the building back, and then also added a row of trees to have the access on that portion of the property completely within their property. And you'll see on the elevations, another addition that they have made is, last time you saw the plans, the building was 35 feet tall, and they have added, to compensate for the loss of square footage there, they have added height to the building. And as you can see, the bioretention landscaping that's located on the southeastern side of the property there, that would lead to the offsite retention basin to serve that. So, let's see. It's a little hard to see here, but there are bike racks located throughout. There's one. I think there's one around here somewhere. One there. So they do provide bicycle parking within the project, and also the applicant has provided and I'll go into detail about the trail a little bit later, but there is an existing 20-foot wide trail easement here along this small sliver of property here, which we do have through an existing easement, and I'll go into detail about it a little further. So I did want to go over the elevation plans. Again, you'll see a little bit of extra height than you did before on the plans, but I know that I wanted to talk about just the architecture, so how it's consistent with contemporary ranch, and also how we analyzed the architectural elevations for the height, to analyze the height and the need for the height limit modification. So you have the color board as well, I believe, over there, that shows the material. So metal siding, plaster, there's a split face block wall area and base of the building, larger windows. They've added, since the last iteration, they've added more windows, more landscaping around the building, a little bit more articulation, and things like that. So at the top, that's the south elevation, and that's facing the river. So that's where a lot of the height limit modification requirements come from, and I'll go into a little bit detail on the next few slides. And I know that at the last Planning Commission meeting, the preliminary review in January, there was some comments from the Commission wanting a little bit more, developing the north elevation a little bit further, and so they have added a few windows. They've increased some of the articulation that came along with adding some of the height, and added a little bit more landscaping around the building to just add a little bit more to that north elevation, since that will be the most visible elevation as you're entering into the site. So, and you can see on the bottom elevation, the west elevation on the left-hand side there, that's just showing a general conceptual diagram of what one of the access gates would look like. Okay, so to go into detail about the height limit modification, so as I mentioned before, the maximum height allowed in the M zone is 45 feet, and that, however, the way that the code has you measure height is from natural grade. However, in this case, because of the topography of the site located next to the river, and additionally the requirement to build 2 feet above base flood elevation, the end result would be that they are going to be grading the entire building slab up about 6 feet. So when you technically read the code and how you measure height, there are very small portions of the building that will be 51 feet high from from natural grade, but really they would be 45 feet high from the finished slab. So that's just the reason for the height modification, is the technicality and the way that it's defined as what how the height is measured. And again, there's just several, primarily on the south side because that's where it slopes, but you know, the whole building will be lifted up to accommodate the floodway or floodplain. So again, I think I went over those points, but the diagram on the bottom kind of shows you how that plays out. So you can see here's the existing ground, and the parking area would be located here, and it also shows you where the base flood elevation is here and why the pad would be that high up based on the requirement for flood control. So. Okay, just to go through some development standards.
Excuse me, can I ask a question on the modification? Is the agreement? Is that just an internal document, or, you know?
It would be part of the resolution of approval for the project. Okay. Yeah. So the setbacks for requirements for interior lots. So since this is an interior lot, the setback regulations for the M zone do not apply, and instead the definition for interior lot setbacks would require 10-foot structural setback from all property lines. In this case, the minimum proposed structural setback from any property line is 39.53 feet. As you see, that's the access is basically provided on the surrounding the building, so that'll mainly be roadway. And also, just to point out, the structure is set back more than the minimum required 200 feet from top of bank at the south property line. So, 10% for landscaping. 10% of the net lot area is required to be landscaping. This project proposes 12%. Again, I'll go into a little more detail about parking, but 100 spaces are provided, including 3 loading spaces, and 134 spaces are required. So they are actually exceeding the parking by 46 spaces. So let's see. Oh, there's 2 loading docks, like I had mentioned before, with space for 4 trucks. And there's a smaller loading space located on the north end of the building for smaller cars or deliveries and things like that. So bicycle parking is also provided. Again, 4 bicycle parking areas were shown on the plans there. Okay, so I just wanted to go into a little bit of detail about how the parking was calculated, because at this point we don't know the specific uses, and I wanted to clarify a little bit of what was included in the staff report just to give you a little bit more detail. But basically, we used the 1 per 500 square feet of gross floor area, and this is based off of the code section referenced for research, development, manufacturing, and processing. And the reason we did so is because at this time we don't necessarily know the specific uses that will be going into the tenant suites, and we don't know how they would, of course, change over time either. So what we did with this parking standard is we just used the more stringent parking standard for your typical industrial uses to ensure that there is adequate parking on the site, regardless of what types of allowed uses go in there. Again, they've provided 180 spaces, and based on the overall square footage of the building and the 1 per 500 requirement, there's 134 required, so therefore they do exceed the parking standards by over 40 spaces. I also included just this parking analysis sheet to just show, hypothetically, because, the industrial zone does allow restaurants, tasting rooms, and so, a 1 per 300 square foot parking standard could apply to some of the suites if those types of uses occupy some of the smaller suites, say, in theory. So what I did was I just made the assumption of the most stringent parking standard that we would anticipate based on size of unit, and went off of that just to kind of give you a little bit of a look of what might look a little more realistic once these suites become occupied. So as you can see, the smaller suites, I used the 1 per 300 and 1 per 2 employee just to see what the max would be for that, and also looked at other typical industrial uses, which typically would be the 1 per 1,000 and 1 per 4 employees, or the 1 per 500, as I mentioned, that we ended up using for the actual calculation. And as you can see, there's 134 spaces required, and under this scenario, which of course is just a hypothetical, but there would be adequate parking, more than would be required at the 1 per 500. So, and of course the applicant, as they come in for tenant improvements for the different uses, we would also then take a look to make sure that there's adequate parking to serve those suites and serve the site. Okay, so lighting. So the plans show string lights at the south parking lot area, and I just wanted to mention that if the applicant does wish to provide pole lighting as opposed to string lighting is also okay, but if they would like to provide just the typical pole lighting, that would be acceptable as well. They would just need to show that on the building and zoning clearance plans.
Just a question, what does the string lighting do for our, our night sky? It seems like that's sort of a going against, or is it just going to be all downcast? Okay.
Yes, they would be still required to be downlighting and protect night skies.
Okay.
Just instead of a pole with the lights, there's a string with the lights. But again, it's up at the applicant's option of how they want to address it. I think the string lights, and Gavin can correct me as I'm wrong, thought they couldn't have the poles because of the flood zone, but that's not correct. They can have the poles in there if they need to. We can address that when you get up there later.
Okay, so I'll continue on. Okay, so signage. I did want to clarify a little bit of what was included in the staff report, just for your benefit, to go over what those requirements are. But just to give an overview here, signage is typically the maximum allowed signage is typically measured by property frontage along a street frontage, and however this is an interior lot, so it would be difficult to analyze it against that. However, in the industrial zone, you're allowed a maximum of 200 square feet of signage. There are some certain types of signs that are exempt, and so that is why, as you saw in the staff report, which I'll clarify, which is why some of that square footage was not included, because they're exempt signs that do not need to be included in the 200 square foot maximum. So before I go to the next slide, some of those exempt signs include individual tenant signs, building directory signs, and address ID signs, those types of signs. So. Okay, so this is just a spreadsheet, and I made several inaccuracies in the staff report signage spreadsheet that I provided, so I just wanted to point some of those out and just further clarify the types of signage that are exempt and what counts and what's shown in the sign plans. So just to go down the list here, there's 4 wall-mounted signs proposed. Each are 36 square feet proposed, and I think in the staff report it said max, so it might have given you that would be the max, but as proposed, it's 36 square feet for those types of signage, which is a total square footage of 144 square feet. Those signs would be counted toward the 100 or 200 square foot max. Then there's also 13 individual tenant blade suspended signs with down-facing lights, and each of those are proposed to be 6 square feet for a total of 78 square feet. However, those are exempt signs as part of our sign standards, so that square footage does not need to be counted in the overall total square footage allowed. The awning sign that's proposed to be interior illuminated, it really wasn't specified what the square footage of that would be. However, if it's larger than 10 square feet, it would not be exempt. If it's 10 feet or smaller, it would be exempt as a tenant sign. Then there's 4 building directory signs, 6 square feet each as proposed, and they're approximately 6 feet tall, but the diagram shown in the master sign plan wasn't entirely clear on that, so I did include a condition to just make sure that it's 6 feet tall or less to meet our code standard for that maximum. So the total square footage for building directory signs is 24 square feet. However, the code does allow an exemption for one building directory sign, so the total counted would only be the 18 square feet, so the 24 minus the 6 for the 1. So And then address ID signs. That is something else I also wanted further clarification on. They did provide the square footage of each sign, but they did not give the detail of where they would be located, or the number of them. So then again, those signs are exempt, so that wouldn't even count toward the overall sign area allowed, but just for clarification on the master sign plan so it's consistent. So overall, there's 246 square feet of known, at this point, known signage, but there's 162 square feet, which is the important number that would count toward the 200 square foot maximum. So therefore, they would meet the maximum signage requirement, or they would have less than the maximum by about 40 or 38 square feet. So they meet the code standard there. Okay, perimeter fencing. Plans indicate chain link material. I did condition the project to provide another kind of fencing material. Chain link fencing would be allowed in certain portions of the site. You go out there and you do see chain link on adjacent properties, but particularly on the north and east side of the property, which are facing more of the entryway, we would work with the applicant to figure out a different fencing material at the perimeter of the property. Okay, trash enclosure locations. As part of the project plans, they've shown the trash enclosure location at several different places. And I've just conditioned the project that they would need to show the final locations on the plans where they propose. I've looked at the locations that they have proposed, and most are okay. I know that they have worked with Marburg on identifying some of those locations. It's just a matter of choosing which location and showing it consistently on the plans. And of course, it would have to be approved. The location would have to be approved by Marburg and the planning department and meet all the design standards for trash enclosures in our municipal code. There is one proposed location that was shown was a little bit off of the property on to the west, which is the same property where the retention basin would be located. So if they did ultimately choose that, they would need to get an easement for that. But I'm not sure which trash enclosure locations they've chosen, but that's just a note in case they do choose that location. Okay, the trail. So there, again, I touched on this earlier. There's an existing 20-foot wide multi-use trail easement at the southernmost point of the property. And we've just conditioned the project that the applicant shall be an active participant for the development of the future trail system, as we've done on several other projects near the river. The applicant has also provided a trail connection, which is 10 feet wide, on site to connect the project site to this easement that's located on their property to connect the trail, their property to the trail system, the future trail system. A formal easement for this is not required. They just chose to incorporate that onto their plans there. So.
And if I can jump in on the trail real quick, the reason we're not requiring construction of the trail on this for this particular project, they only have 20 feet, it's 20 by 20, is their responsibility. It makes no sense now to build a 20-foot stretch of trail that goes nowhere. So, like we did with Terravant, we have the easement through there. When the city gets the funds and is ready to do the entire trail, then the city would be able to construct a trail in this area and the other areas as well.
Okay, just a brief touching on the sewer lift station. The applicant, there is an existing sewer lift station located at the northern side of the property, which is where the access road to the north would be is being proposed. So they would need to move the sewer lift station to allow adequate vehicular access and circulation throughout the site. The project has been conditioned when they do move the sewer lift station to its new location, which I can go back to the site plan and show you where that is. It's just next to the building, more close to the building on the north side. They would be required to provide a maintenance agreement, service agreement, and emergency contact plan, things like that, to the city as part of that. Site drainage, there are storm drain inlets throughout the project site, primarily in the landscape areas, and there's a storm drain outfall which directs stormwater to the offsite retention basin, which is on the property to the west. Okay, just a little more detail on the offsite retention basin. Again, it's located on the adjacent property, located to the west of the project site, on that third parcel there. again, an easement agreement is required to locate that retention basin on the adjacent property, and it will be required to accommodate stormwater flows that will result from the development of this project. And again, the final location of the retention basin will be located outside of the willow thicket habitat area. Final location to be shown on the building and zoning clearance plans.
And if I can add, the applicant does have verbal agreement for the basin at this point, but not the official agreements. But we wouldn't bring this forward if he didn't have some type of conversation with the adjoining property owner.
Okay, so just briefly to go over the Planning Commissioner's comments from the January preliminary review. They asked for better clarification on the individual uses of the tenant spaces. I know that I think maybe the applicant can speak more to this, but I think that at this point they know that it would be related primarily to wine, beer, and spirits distribution and other light industrial uses. But Gavin may have a little more information as to what might be intended to occupy those spaces.
And wine tasting and such is an allowed usage?
At this point, wine tasting would be an allowed use as long as there is some sort of a processing facility association. So they're processing the wine there, and then as a secondary use of the site would be the wine tasting.
Just not like a wine tasting room by itself.
That's correct.
Okay.
Also, to consider developing the north elevation further, I showed you on the architectural sheets they did do some of that with adding windows and more elements to that side. Looking into adding the possibility of adding a bus stop near the project site, I think I'll let the applicant talk a little bit more on that. Add a pathway to connect suites on the east side of the building, and they've done that as I've shown you on the project plans. And Commissioner McLaughlin at the time asked if there was another option for roll-up door design, and I think I'll let them also go a little bit more into detail on what their response is to that. But there was also a concern with limited restrooms shown on the plans, and I think at the last meeting we had clarified that as tenants come in, they would be required to meet building code standards for restrooms and things like that. So the environmental review, as I mentioned, it's the mitigating negative declaration was prepared for the project, and it's currently being circulated for review for starting on November 21st through December 21st. We've received one comment letter. It really was more of an informational document to the applicant, just letting them know that, and I have copies of that if you'd like to see it, but just letting them know of an existing easement on the west side of the parcel that would locate the off-site retention basin, so way outside of where they would even be proposing the retention basin, more just for, and this was from Santa Barbara County. Several special studies were done that were incorporated into the environmental document. That's the traffic study, peer review of a biological study, air quality and greenhouse gas analysis, and again, they have been incorporated into the environmental document. So the recommendation is that the Planning Commission keep the public hearing open and continue the public hearing to December 21st in order to allow for the full 30-day public review period for the environmental document for the project as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. And that concludes my presentation. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Andrea. Any questions, guys?
Is there a bus stop anywhere along Industry?
I don't think so.
Is that along 246?
It's all along 246. There isn't any stops down into industrial.
That's all I have.
Just one thing here. Page 4 of your thing. The city shall discourage new commercial or industrial development that allows customers for deliveries to use residential streets. You're designated as a non-residential traffic, but if the other property gets developed, that makes it sort of residential. And so does that change the level? I think you're saying it's going to get to a level C.
Are you referring to the traffic study? The level
here you're saying it's going to be
the traffic study did look at this project as well. For both projects were looked at. So the analysis that you have in here includes the cumulative projects that we have.
Both properties.
For both properties, that is correct. So when you see the environmental document for the next property, it also includes this particular property.
Okay, and then, because that almost turns it into a residential street a little bit. So does the level of service get changed because of that?
No, it still wouldn't be considered a residential street. It would still be commercial industrial. Even though it was a mixed-use project with residential, it wouldn't change that street to residential.
Okay, gotcha.
So on our previous, I think with the previous owner of this property, we had some dialogue around the basin and some of the wildlife considerations that were going on in there. Is that going to be, is that already part of this consideration that we've had?
Yeah, the environmental document has been prepared and does address the biological resources. There is a biological resources section that does address these issues. The basin, they are proposing this off-site retention basin, and again, outside of that, it'll be changed to outside that Willow Thicket area, but these environmental considerations have been made and mitigation measures put in, appropriate mitigation measures put in to the document.
Just to clarify, and Mr. Morris can talk about it, the person who move forward with the lawsuit against the city regarding the biology on the bowling alley project. Mr. Moores has been in contact with him as this project has been moving forward, so he's worked in coordination with that gentleman, and Gavin can talk a little bit more about that. But we're fully addressed it, and I think we're good.
Okay, it's good to hear. No, I think most of my questions will come after maybe Gavin has a chance to stand up and speak.
So go ahead and open the public hearing then. And
let's go ahead and open the public hearing.
Okay.
Well, you've got the clicker, Andrea.
I didn't have that set up. She
I
can do it for
Okay, alright. Andrea, thank you. That was a great presentation. Very thorough, I must admit. That was really good. So my name's Gavin Moores. Just here to give you a quick spin through of the project and to give you some input on how we came up with some of the design concepts. I will touch base first of all to say that the original plan that we had as from the design team, and members aren't here for various reasons related to the fire down south, but the original concept was to create a use and a design a building for a specific intent, and that intent was either distillery, beer, wine, etc. And so when you look at some of the elements that are contained in the architecture, particularly the height in the center of the building, that is one of the reasons why we had that height there, because those windows can open up and allow heat, etc. to come out. That is very beneficial for distilling and other uses. We also did not want to have a building that was literally like a box where you have these high vertical sides, so that's why we came in with a pitched roof, and I'll let Paul can answer some questions on that discovery process, and really trying to keep a building that was a little bit different. Obviously it's a large building, but trying to not make it feel like a really large building. So Andrea, if you want to go into the next slide, please. With similar slide shows the location, and you can see right down there in that little orange dog leg there is where that narrow strip of property is that goes down to the creek. Okay, these are the gates. These are the summary of highlight points that Andrea has already covered, so I won't bore you with those. But I would say that I think that one of the things that was important for us is to look at the biosphere on how we were treating stormwater and how we were handling that stormwater for the property. And we have some other ideas that we'll probably continue on in further researching that I think may enhance like the flow wells that we've used on Vineyard Village that have been very successful. So, but that's more of a technical design stuff that we can address later on. Next slide, please. I have some summary on the comments on the Planning Commission, so Andrea's covered that. I think that one of the problems when you're going out on adventures like this is to say, okay, we're going to lock ourselves into this design, we're going to lock ourselves into this use and purpose, and all of a sudden you get something that you really wasn't planned for. And so that's one of the reasons why we didn't want to be in the position where we're completely confined just to the beer, wine and spirit side of stuff. We did develop the north elevation, and I've got some input on some fencing ideas as well. I agree with you on the chain link, etc. And just to talk a bit, the bus stop, is an interesting one because I had some discussions with a couple of the adjacent neighbours, and they were saying, okay, that's great, but then that means that we have pedestrian traffic that isn't really planned for in an industrial area, and they were concerned about forklift trucks backing around, etc. So just from a practical perspective, and my opinion is it's probably best if a bus stop, I agree, is located at some point in time down at the end of Industrial Way. The next one slide, please. We did incorporate the path, and we looked at the smaller units and the doors there, and when we actually start drilling down into materials and suppliers, you get locked into being consistent throughout the project, and so I think that's what we've done in the design and the materials that we've selected thus far. And then obviously Andrea quite rightly addressed the restroom use, and that wasn't clearly defined last time. Okay. Biological impacts and environmental review. It's the last hearing was January 19th, and we spent a lot of time on environmental review. I personally met out there with State Fish and Wildlife. We've had our biologists, we've done bird studies, we've done plant studies, everything, all of which I know a lot more about than when I first embarked on this process, and some of which was really interesting, which has caused us to look at doing raptor relocation nesting areas along the river, and that's just something that we want to explore further. But these are just some of the stuff that I think is important. It's really located on non-native grassland and a weed field, essentially as described by our biologists when they were walking around with the state. And we avoid a lot of the sensitive habitat areas, the buffer. We've got no jurisdictional features on site, and there's no cultural resources that are known, and obviously we're providing the public open space. And I think one of the things that is important on all the projects that we try and do, we try and strive to have a certain amount of environmental awareness. We know that the building code is very strict on environmental energy use and concerns, and for us, particularly looking at this property and looking at the water flow that is coming from further north onto this property, we've kind of focused in and looking at what can we do to pre-treat stormwater runoff that's just coming up from streets, and so that's why we got in as much of the bioswales as we could. Okay, next slide, please, Andrea. These are just some of the iterations. It's difficult to see at this point in time with the retention basin. You can see this. The initial design was that small little pocket down on the other side, and then we spoke to the adjacent neighbours, and I've got like 6 or 7 variations of these where we tried to move them around. And as Andrea covered earlier on, we'll locate one in the correct position. And I've had long conversations with trade. We've got a draft easement document out to them. It's just a time of finalising here, etc. Okay. On the architectural side, yes, we're in the contemporary ranch. I touched a little bit on what we wanted to do to reduce the mass, bulk and scale of the building and how we wanted to handle that. We realised today when we met with a manufacturer, supplier of the building systems that we're going to be using, that we needed to raise just the perimeter outside walls by 11 inches so you can get adequate storage height for beer and wine set up. So that's a minor change to the pitch of the roof, etc. And then I've got some fencing options for you that I included later on in this little quick run through here. Okay. So architectural design, you've seen the site plan there, which Andrea covered pretty well. Mark was correct in our assumption initially about the string lights, and so we were happy to do the pole lights in a more conventional manner of it. And what you'll see down here on the bottom left-hand side, I'll just go over here. This is the location of the bioswale area that runs down, and then we'll have some treatment abilities in there to stormwater runoff. Next slide, Andrea, please. These are some of the elevations that Andrea has really encountered, and what's really interesting about this is that if you look at the different roof articulation, we're trying to get away from the box, provide some movement in the roof, and then we wanted to provide some sort of an element that was closer to the main point, and that's why you have that stucco entrance in there, which if it's a larger tenant will come in, they'll want a central point of entrance into that building as well. Okay, Andrea. A little bit more elevated gives you a better idea, and you can see some of these story windows there that will be able to be opened up, ventilation, etc. Next slide. little bit closer on, you can see the gate. Now, why do we do the gate? One of the things that came up in discussions is that if you move into a spirits process, you come under a whole different set of rules and regulations by the feds and security, and being able to monitor who's coming in, coming out, especially in a larger facility. That was one of the reasons why we proposed the gate. So it's basically the honest truth there. It was just from a process of discovery. Okay, thank you, Andrea. Next one. This is one of the areas where there is an open gap, and I'll just go over here. In that particular location, there is no fencing. It's pretty much open at this point in time, and the line that is right there in the middle, there's an existing building that's just been recently built there, and so I'll show you in the slide what we're proposing possibly for a fencing option there. Okay, Andrea. Landscape design, Robert's here. We'll spin back to Robert if you have any questions on Robert's design, but I think what we try to do is obviously the drought tolerant. We've looked into providing some greenery pockets obviously around the perimeter of the building, so it doesn't just look in the same same metal or structural form that you'd have. It will be broken up with landscaping, and the trees planting, we wanted to mirror what Terrorun has done on their east side, which I think has grown into be looking really well as time has progressed. Okay, Andrea. This is a little bit of a section of the bar swale there. It shows you the cobble and various plantings that are a key element to stormwater cleaning. And next slide. I took these pictures because this is Figueroa Mountain Brewery that is actually right next to our office, and this top picture, which is this one here, this picture actually, that fence is constructed from metal posts and rebar that they actually welded onto those metal posts and let it rust naturally, and then they planted these vines. Something like that, that's a lot softer instead of just a block wall, I think is a great way to provide security. And then this other picture that I took is at the other side of our office, and those are railway tracks that the railway, Pacific Union Railway, stuck in the ground, cut holes through, and they put pipe through. And I thought those two ideas were pretty kind of cool, pretty unique. I hadn't seen them before, and that's sort of like an example of the fencing that we're talking about and providing. So with that, I'll end it there. Just a couple of clarifications. I've had conversations with a number of people around there, and I've had a lot of conversations with the other people that are involved in the sewer lift station. There are a number of existing buildings that come into that sewer lift station. That's one of the reasons why we're trying to clean it up, so to speak, as far as agreements and operations. And that's it. Thank you.
I just have a question. Mm-hmm. The individual tenant walls, are they floor to ceiling?
Yeah, they're going to be floor to ceiling inside the space, so each person can use that high volume in their little space. I had a couple of things I just wanted to add to what Gavin was talking about. Being overparked by 46 spaces allows us to go with more intense uses. I think Andrea articulated that excellently. But also, if some of the tenants say, we have roll-up doors on the east side, and if they have a big delivery business, we're going to try to locate those guys down on the northwest corner where there's access to the roll-up doors. But if somebody went in over there and they had something that's a lot of shipping in and out, we might take a space or two out over there and balance it out so that they could have a designated spot to get out to offload a truck into those small spaces up on the northeast corner. Also, one of the reasons we did it's called catenary lighting, where it hangs by the wire, is that we're required to have all the junction boxes above the floodplain out in the parking lot. So the way you typically do that is you run the conduit underground and it sweeps up through the top of the concrete foundation, and then the pole sits on top of it, and there's like a little thing that is the access to get into the conduit to put the wires in and run them up the pole. And so that thing has to be above the floodplain, which in some cases might be 7 or 8 feet tall. So we'd have the foundation going up super high, and then set a pole on top of there, and then you'd access it up there, and it would look really bulky. So with the other type, we can run the wires up high, and we're just having the foundation down low, so that it's big enough for a car, so it'll hit the concrete part, not the pole. But we don't need to have it 8 or 7 feet tall. So I think it'll look a little bit better and not as bulky. And then if you can just backtrack to one of the ones that shows the roof plan. Yeah, that one's good. So the portion of the building that is exceeding is the center portion on the south. Maybe go to one that shows the south elevation. So it's really just this part right here, which I think adds to the look of the building from the parking lot. The rest of it, it's all sloping down, and it's down below the max height limit when you measure it, so it's really just that very, very center part that's asking for the variance. Now I suppose that when we get the whole thing under construction and we start getting people interested in the building and they want to come in and they have a specific use where maybe it's appropriate to have a different type of roll-up door, we can address that with planning and change that out to be one of the sectional glass overhead doors or something at that point. But if we put those in everywhere at this point and somebody came in there with forklifts or some kind of use like that, it just get broken up depending if it was a hardcore industrial use, as we're expecting some of these spaces to be having that kind of tenant. But the design was trying to break up the mass of the building so that it spread the light around to the different tenant spaces by having the clear stories in different areas and making it so that it can be designed with one of these super efficient metal buildings. We just met with a contractor who's a specialist in that kind of building. I've done a couple of those, and he came down from San Luis Obispo to talk to us today about using these prefabricated metal kind of SIPS panels that are insulated with foam, and they have an inside and outside finish already on them. And we're going to look at whether that corner element is actually made out of conventional stucco, which is 3/4 of an inch thick over sheeting, or if it's also going to be made out of a SIPS panel that has like a micro plaster finish on the outside of it. It depends on which one performs better. We're trying to make the building super energy efficient. It's going to have to conform to Cal Green, and we're going to do our best to make this building like one of the nicest buildings down on Industrial Way. So the other thing was restrooms. We had a restroom core, if you can go to a plan view, and it's really in the northwest corner of the building. It's not our intention. Right over here. We got these 4 guys over here that are going to have sort of smallish square footage, and we figured that they could share that restroom facility, and the others that are out on the northeast would probably put their bathrooms inside their individual spaces, so you could have an option of somebody to have a common area restroom, somebody wants a private restroom to build as part of their tenant improvement. And for sure the large tenants would probably be using their own facilities that they would design in depending on the number of employees and occupant load and that kind of thing. So it's not really our intention to provide this central bathroom that everyone has to walk a mile to get to, but just for the tenants that are over there. So there's some options there. So if you rent a small place, it does take up a lot of square footage to put in a couple of bathrooms that take up 50 square feet each, That's it.
And could you state your name for the record?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Paul Poirier, I'm the architect.
Any questions, guys?
I just have a comment that from what we saw, I guess it seems like I didn't realize it's January, but I think you've answered a lot of our questions and stuff, and I like how you redone the north, and that looks a lot better. Beforehand it was pretty much sort of a boxy looking warehouse, and this looks like it's actually, I applaud you for making some changes there. That is good work.
Yeah, it's a nice looking building. I do have a couple quick questions if you don't mind. From the windows perspective, you mentioned that one of the reasons having the windows up high in the high elevation is to allow for some of the heat that's generated with some of the distilling to escape. Are those windows going to be open? Because I've seen some of these barn-like structures, and those windows tend to be stable. They don't move. So
one of the things, if we are successful in getting the tenant that we're hoping to, is that you will be able to automatically open those windows. So it wouldn't just be someone's got to get up on a forklift and open them out. So it would be something like that. But that's the general intent, and that's why and I think the other key element, as Paul pointed out, just having that natural light core coming all the way through the building in a number of areas is going to be really cool for people working there, and just the overall feel to the building itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that helps with the overall design quite a bit. I had also had a question around the trash structures, especially the ones at the north elevation. Kind of right when you come into the building, I thought that was an interesting location to have kind of your trash.
If you go to the very last slide, I threw in the mark. It's never easy doing this type of stuff, and we've had extensive conversation with Marble where they wanted trash pickup and locations, and so we came up with a number of trash pickup locations, and I think the one you're referring to is in the top left corner there.
Correct.
And that will obviously be enclosed in a block area that we have to landscape, and I agree with you, it's not the ideal space, but Marble's like one here, and then they were very strong on the orange one right there on the same side, but we pointed out to them some other locations that we could do. So this is kind of like the smorgasbord of trash pickup areas, and so we're hopefully to narrow that down with Marble.
Sure. Okay. One quick question also about some of the trucks and the deliveries. So looking at the truck bays, it looks like they're quite significant. There's 4 of them. They look like they can handle pretty large 18-wheel style trucks. And this might be, Andrea, this might be for you as far as a staff question for circulation. I know we've got a couple of tenants that have large trucks, but typically they're fairly medium-sized trucks for most of those neighbors. So is there any concern with having kind of these smaller private streets with the easements and getting them in and out?
I think to answer your question, part of the reason that we are requiring that central access easement is because of truck maneuvering, because of the large size of the trucks. We've had the traffic consultant take a look at turning radii and based on lengths of trucks, large trucks, and they did determine that, particularly for the east side there, that easement would be required. That's the main reason would be also to stay within the property, but also to allow for, because it's such a tight turn there, so that easement would allow for better circulation, at least from that east side loading dock in and out of the property there. I think the location on the west side, they do have that roadway area, the parking area to appropriately back out and then, take the road on the west side of the property out to the street there.
Okay.
So.
If I can just address that, on the west side there, it's perfect entrance and accessibility for a truck to come in. You've got all the area, the space in the parking lot to pull forward, back out, and then do a continual loop. You can see those lines. There's actually, if you look closely on the bottom right-hand corner, that's a truck turning radius pattern that we put on there, and then you'll see it coming up on the top, so that will be the route out.
Okay.
I know what I would probably rather see, instead of trucks, etc., going out in between Ascendant and Terravant, that we just get a turning easement there so that the trucks can back in and will go out the primary access and entrance point.
Okay.
So that's our goal. That's what our plan is.
Yeah. Okay. You obviously thought about it quite a bit, which is great.
And that template that's shown driving around the perimeter of the site is a 65-footer, so that's like the biggest grocery store truck you got. In case we get somebody who is super successful and they wanted to pull a truck in, those are actually truck wells, so it backs in and there's a 48-inch dock there that the truck would back into for some serious shipping of some things.
I noticed. Look at that. Those are some big dogs you got.
We're optimistic that somebody is super successful.
Being big.
I think that there's a trash enclosure that's down in the floodplain, and I think on the latest plans we did take that out of the floodplain, so it wasn't located in that area that's going to be underwater.
It's all the water we have running on right now.
So your action tonight is to make a motion to continue to December 21st, and between now and then, Andrea will be putting together the final staff report, the final environmental document, addressing any comments we receive on the environmental document, and presenting you the whole package for approval on the 21st.
Okay.
And I know Mr. Moores won't be here, but his representatives will be to address any further questions that may arise.
Well, that's fine.
Oh, not a problem. We're happy to accommodate it, and a lot of cities do the first public hearing during the environmental review period. We don't usually do it, but we're glad to accommodate you on that.
And Gavin, just one last question. Have you gotten any more confirmation of potential tenants? I know they talked a lot about distilleries and brewing potentially. Have you heard anything else?
We have, yes. I don't want to count the chickens before their eggs have hatched, but yes, we're pretty bullish on the opportunities here. And I think it would be great if we could get a blend of smaller businesses and a couple of really large, or even one large business. That would be ideal, because the reason why our thought process when we're talking about marketing this, we came up with a network was we wanted a group of people that were in the same industry that could kind of network together. And so that was the initial concept, the initial spur, and that's the building that you have.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But
well, from what I've seen, and I think a lot of us have mentioned it, what you put in front of us is really nice. And
thank you.
We'll wait till obviously the next planning commission to make a decision. But
right. Chair Dunson, thank you very much. Fellow commissioners, thank you.
All right. A motion for a continuance in a second and a vote.
Okay.
I move that we continue this agenda item till the meeting of December 21st.
I second the motion.
It can just be a roll call. Not a roll call, just a voice vote.
Okay, voice vote.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great. Yes, we're good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see here.
Thank you very much.
So let's. Okay, there you go. Okay, do we have any written communications?
No, sir.
Planning commissioner comments?
I just had one comment. I really didn't pay attention to it, but sort of surprised, and I know it's probably an allowable usage, between the old China Palace and Pea Soup Anderson, now that Gold Coast has stored cars there.
We have active code enforcement on that and trying to get that addressed. And
thank you.
Andrea will be taking care of the final. We've been working with them to try to get that off of there, but now it's time to finally get rid of them.
It just doesn't fit there.
No, it does not. We agree, and we're trying to give them a little benefit of the doubt, give them time to move things, but it's past the point where they were supposed to remove them.
Thank you. And I just have one extra question. We talked a little bit about the trail. That's been ongoing since I started this position. Have we gotten any headway in that regard?
Well, we've gotten a lot of the easements, and when you see the hub will be coming next month to you.
Okay.
And as part of that, Gavin's proposing to put in trails on that particular property. So, along with trails into his property, so there'll be raptor areas, habitat areas, but he's planning to put the trail in, so that'll connect to our golf course. And then we do have money we keep budgeting for the trail, so then it's just a matter of time until we can get some of the ones towards the park. And with Gavin's help, we might be able to get Mr. Jerkowitz's property, get easements there, then we'll just have Williamson left. But we don't want to do piecemeal, other than Gavin's that he's going to do as part of his project. But once we get the other easements in place, I think we'll be able to then start moving forward on the design on that.
Okay.
Currently, you have a calendar for 2017. Do you have a public notice of the year for 2018 Planning Commission meeting?
We will have that at
We'll have a new one
Yeah.
on the 21st.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. And then planning director report.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Irma to give you an update on where we are on finalizing the specific plan to have our final document. I cut her off guard.
She's like, what?
As you're all aware, the City Council had their second reading and the ordinance approving the specific plan on October 26th, and what we're doing right now is incorporating into the document all the changes that the Planning Commission requested, all the changes the City Council requested. As part of that, we are needing to update many of the graphics that were in the plan. We just didn't do it piecemeal because they're all very involved and costly to update the graphics. So we're doing that all right now and coming up with all new graphics and illustrating everything that the City Council requested that we do. So I understand the graphics are, I'm supposed to be seeing the first draft of them next week, but we're shooting sometime towards the end of January to actually have a finalized document that's published. Kind of like.
Will that be on the city website then? What's it? Oh, okay.
It will. We will be posting it.
Okay.
But right now, what we have done is we've created some architectural standards and signage standards just based upon what the action the City Council took in October. And so as we're reviewing projects that come in, for instance, the one at 518 Avenue of Flags that has been submitted, the Avenue of Flags in second northeast corner of the old gas station site, we do have a set of draft standards, but they're based on what the City Council approves, so we do have something to evaluate projects by. Sure. And that's my update.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And is 518 still moving forward?
It's still moving forward.
Yes,
We're trying.
We met with them. We met with the applicant, and as I mentioned, I did create standards so we'd have something to give to them to guide them on pulling together the architectural treatments that were desired by the City Council as part of the Avenue Flags. So.
And I will have Andrea brief you on the bowling alley.
I've met with Mark and I have met with the bowling alley team, Live Oak Lanes project, once, and I actually met with them again today. They will be coming back to the commission for a development plan modification. They're making several changes to the architecture, which we thought would be really great. The changes that they're proposing are going to make it look really nice. They're also reducing the size of the building, the footprint, to create more connectivity, kind of like the network project has, around the building, and just making it more functional for the different activities that they'd like to see go on at the bowling alley. So, and also adding more deck space, because it's such a nice view there, looking at the river from the south. So they're going to be making some changes that would require development plan modification. So that will be coming to you as soon as possible. They'd like to get it moving here pretty quickly. So
they're trying to match the architecture a little more of the buildings in that area, yes. More ranchy style.
Type. Oh, they're not going to go Art Deco.
They're not on the
I know they're not on Avenue of Flags, but you think they try to blend?
No, we can't. The Art Deco is not permitted outside the specific plan area. They have the community design guidelines. So they're going to try to match the architecture, more ranchy type of building to fit in. And that was their call on it, and we thought the revisions they had looked really, really good.
Nice. All right. Fantastic.
And that's it.
Pool tables.
They still are. And we're hoping we can have all four of you on December 21st for this project, because we do need a quorum to get it approved. So if anybody's not going to be here, we need to know as soon as possible. So
okay, we'll let you know. All right. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting of December 7th.
All right.